Hello, welcome to the Geekly. My name is Jules.
I'm Lex.
Today we're talking about the Arrowverse shows. We've got Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, Batwoman. We're talking about American Horror Story, and we're talking about Titans today.
Yeah, it's a jam-packed episode. So.
Jam-packed. Let's dive right in. Arrow, for me, I think was the best of the Arrowverse this week. Fairly formulaic, case of the week. There was a MacGuffin at the end. You know, they're not reinventing the wheel, but it was playful. There was fan service. It's like a band touring, playing the hits. You know, all the big kind of A-lister Arrowverse Arrow characters came back for one final hurrah. Bit of Tommy Merlin, bit of Malcolm Merlin, bit of Moira. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it mostly because of the fan service, but yeah, it entertained me. And then they made the horrible decision of having 2040 flash forwards in it.
I think it's still the 2040 storyline is still the problem that they have two kind of complete stories that they're trying to tell at the same time, and it doesn't work because you don't really get invested in either storyline. I appreciated the fan service. It was kind of nice to see some familiar faces come back. I don't know if it was like the best for me this week.
Okay.
But I did enjoy it. They could have done a lot more in the kind of present day alternate Earth storyline if they didn't have the 2040 storyline in there, and that would have been interesting. It's like I liked seeing the characters take different roles.
Yeah.
You know, like particularly Chase was kind of a favorite.
I liked him in his season. I thought he was pretty good, and it was nice to have him back as like a good guy for a brief period of time.
A very grumpy good guy.
Yeah.
But like
he was the kind of gruff Oliver Queen.
Yeah.
You have failed this city kind of character, which felt like he was playing it quite truthfully.
And now I'm just wondering if this season leading up to Crisis is basically just going to be him bouncing around different Earths and collecting things, and if that's going to be the way we go, which could work really well. It might not necessarily be a bad thing. Diggle's teamed up with him. I'm presuming that Laurel is going to be like the third of their kind of trinity now.
That sounds good. You've got me with that. You've tantalised me with the Trinity bouncing around the multiverse. I mean, I think it's possibly my favourite Arrow episode in quite a while, just because it felt fun, you know.
I think this is probably the first time in a couple seasons that I've watched an episode of Arrow and haven't been sitting there thinking, oh my god, how much more of this is left.
It's been a tough few years to be an Arrow fan.
It has. And I think like there's a lot to worry about with season 8, because as we know, not all shows go out on a high note, and they could very easily just screw this up. So I think so far this episode shows promise for the upcoming season.
So my problem with Supergirl so far is that this Catco being taken over by Rojas and Kara being bullied as a journalist again. It feels like such a season 1, season 2 kind of thing. And Kara has evolved so much as a woman and as a superhero in that time. And to bring her back into this like playground politics kind of vibe again, I don't know why they do that in season 5. It bothers me so much. I hope this is very short-lived and she just quits, because we've seen that James has been offered 2 big roles in like 24 hours or something. Maybe she can just kind of walk away from Catco, as sad as it will be. She can't go freelance because I'm guessing that counts as competing, and she's on that non-compete contract that we're still baffled about. But walk away from that and just maybe be full-time Supergirl or be something else, because this will not do. I quite like the vibe of this season so far. I like what everybody else is up to. The cast feels like happy in their own skins at the moment, but Kara has this kind of anchor around her neck, and I'm not happy with it at all. It's just, what a poor decision. What a poor storytelling decision, for me anyway.
I mean, it is a repetition of the kind of first 2 seasons of her just being bullied as a reporter, and you know, she's made a name for herself. She won a Pulitzer.
Like last year, she won a Pulitzer, and she's on the fashion round this time.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense, and it seems really petty, and I can't see that somebody with like the business acumen of Roja making that decision to like bench a Pulitzer Prize winning writer just for the hell of it. I feel like this season is going very, very slow. Like we don't really have any kind of villains on the horizon. There's a lot of drama between Alex and her girlfriend. There's drama between Lena and Kara, between Nia and Brainy. and they seem to be like really focusing on kind of like domestic drama as opposed to the superhero drama, and I'm kind of not that into it. None of those little like traumatic situations really grab me, particularly because they've done exactly the thing I didn't want them to do with Lena, which I feel is just, it was an easy choice to make. Oh, she's a Luthor, so let's make her a bad person. It was much more interesting when she was kind of walking that line in between the two, and
chaotic neutral or something, was it? Yeah.
That was much more interesting to me than her as a flat out villain, and I don't feel like her motivation for being villain is really on point either. It feels very shoehorned in.
The salvation of Lena as a good person or a good character may be in the fact that she has beef with Rojas as well. Is there going to be some kind of team up to take down Rojas? I don't know, but do you have any thoughts on that? Or do you think she's just down this route of evil now?
I think she's probably just down this route of evil. If they do a redemption arc, I would be very surprised. Supergirl doesn't take a lot of risks. Having Lena as the bad guy is kind of a very safe road to go down.
What did you make of Lena putting hope into Eve, I should say? Her new little, like, walking, talking Siri.
I mean, that is kind of a point of no return.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get redeemed from that?
Yeah.
Because she essentially just killed Eve.
Yeah, she did it with such a kind of smile on her face. Like, okay, well, you want to be my friend again? Okay, well, sacrifice himself for this project, basically.
My question was, is this season going to be a slow burn? And if it is, it's going to be a very long season, I think. The other thing I wondered is if they're not committing to kind of like a season-long villain or a mid-season villain because of Crisis, and so basically Kara's just going to be treading water like she has in the past until we get to Crisis.
It's going to be a long couple of months, isn't it, up until Crisis, and then presumably after that the new status quo will be explored. Last year it started quite powerfully. I think we had Ben Lockwood.
Yeah, we had the whole political thing and about the aliens and everything, and that was really interesting. But again, they dragged it out too long.
Yeah.
It should have stopped kind of at the mid-season break, and they kept up with it.
What do you make about the guy that works for the Times they're kind of weirdly flirting? She hates him, and that's how all these things tend to begin. We find out he works at a soup kitchen. Is he going to be another like male character that's rammed into a romantic relationship with Supergirl?
Yeah, that's where we're heading. And the whole like seeing him at the soup kitchen was like to try to win us over and warm him in our hearts. And again, it's a really lazy move. They could have shown that aspect of him in a million different ways, and they chose the most blatant, obvious way to do it.
It's just a show where people aren't allowed to be single.
Yeah, and it's not even a unique scenario, because like as you mentioned, this is how these things start off. They hate each other. They have this like witty banter back and forth. They're competing, and then all of a sudden they realize that they don't actually hate each other. She'll discover that he works in a soup kitchen. She'll just fall head over heels in love with him, and that'll be the end of that.
Do you have any thoughts on Batwoman?
I think it's kind of shaping up to be the best show in the Arrowverse. Quality-wise, in terms of the writing and the production value and the acting, it's leaps and bounds above the rest of the Arrowverse, which can at times seem fairly childish. I would have liked more kind of mayhem from the Alice scenario than we got. It's still kind of a slower pace than I would like, but I do feel like Batwoman is kind of a step up in the next level of the CW shows.
This is like a 2-episode villain, and so we're going to get somebody from 3 onwards, because it seems this is the end of that story. But God, what a horrible villain to start off a brand new show. I just felt like this show needed to, because it's a real shame. We see on Twitter that the trolls and the gatekeepers, without even seeing the show, are determined to ruin it, because all these fake reviews are coming in on Rotten Tomatoes, and they're really trying to just destroy it. And the hope was that it would come out so strong and just blow everybody out of the water. As someone that was so positive about this TV show, I can't find anything to latch onto. Every character in it, with the exception of Batwoman and the exception of the woman that works in the unofficial medical place, are just cardboard cutouts. I find it a very grueling watch, a very tough watch, where I'm often thinking, wow, this feels like it's been about 3 hours and we're about 28 minutes into a 40-minute show. This should have been post Elseworlds crossover.
Yeah, I
shouldn't-
agree with that.
Yeah, we shouldn't be having any of this kind of origin, or we should maybe get her origin through some kind of like some Oliver Queen season 1 flashbacks. But she should be ready to go and being up against like better villains. I've put the villain is less compelling than Ricardo Diaz, which is a damning statement. Yeah, like I'm not giving up hope, but it's the least compelling of all of them so far. But I've got high hopes for the future. I think they tend to film about 4 or 5 together, then there's a little break, and then they come back, and I'm hoping they might sort of see the mixed response. Because I was concerned that it was just me. I was thinking, have the trolls like got into my mind? Have I been like subconsciously like turned? And I've read some pretty damning reviews of it from some like top line geek journalist websites and stuff like that, where they're picking a lot of holes. And because we love Batman, it physically pains me to say, but I'm really struggling with this one. Supergirl is everything that I think Batwoman wants to be. Obviously, it's a light and airy version of it. There is no chemistry between any of the actors. There's nothing really clicking so far. But yeah, Gotham City, yay! This is what we clearly are just not going to agree on, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think we can. I mean, I can't even really pinpoint exactly like why I'm enjoying it. It may just be because it's like a darker version of the other shows on the Arrowverse. 'Cause even Arrow, it's not as dark as I would like it to be.
They've dabbled in comic relief.
Yeah, they have a lot. And I kind of feel like with Batwoman, we have a show where they're not going to pull their punches as much. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a very pretty show. It's,
oh God.
Like
beautiful to see her actually riding a bike down an actual city rather than like a little staged area.
Yeah, I mean, like the production value of Batwoman looks a lot higher than the rest of the CW shows.
It looks like Nolan-esque.
Yeah, I was actually thinking, like in terms of appearance, it's almost up there with Titans, almost, not quite.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. Yeah.
But like if Batwoman had come out on the DC streaming service, I wouldn't have been surprised. Like that's kind of the quality of the show, and I don't know, there were some moments of like real emotion and like real pathos that weren't undercut by some trite phrase. It was like they just kind of let the misery be there, and yeah, I dig that.
I think it just needs time, as often as shows always do in season 1. It just needs time to kind of find
I mean,
itself,
I do agree that they fumbled the first villain. We should have had a more dynamic villain, or she should have done more stuff than just kind of hang around and look manic.
Yeah. And the fact that we were like, is it the sister? Yeah, it's the sister.
Yeah, of course it's the sister.
Feels like such an odd first step for this show.
Especially to get rid of her so quickly. It does leave a lot of questions of like what exactly happened to her in the intervening years to make her the person she is. Why does she like hate her father and sister so much? She obviously remembers who she was, so why didn't she, say, hey, like, this is where I live? Because they weren't, like, tiny children. It's only been 15 years. So.
Yeah.
I guess when they introduced Alice, I was expecting kind of a Joker-level villain, and I didn't get that.
I mean, I was expecting, Rachel Girl's daughter. Is it Talia?
Talia.
When Oliver rescued her, I assumed it was for this. Like she'd swoop in and be here, and that feels like a good level to start with. Yeah, a little bit perplexed. I'm not sure what the kind of point of this was. The only bit of intrigue I have in pretty much the whole story is who's taken the knife, who did send the goons to take the knife, because every question we've had has been answered almost immediately. No kind of mysteries have been allowed to kind of evolve over even 2 episodes. Every question has been immediately answered. So this is something that we have now, that maybe this is the true villain of the season. Ruby Rose is great.
Yeah.
Ruby Rose is really great. Gotta get in that new suit though.
Yeah.
For the love of God, people. Got to get in that new suit.
This first suit it's painful to look at. Like what it does to her face is just yeah, they need, like, I don't understand. Like, all of the promo materials had this really awesome looking suit, and then they've just stuck her in this thing. It doesn't look cool or inspire fear or do anything along those lines at all. She looks goofy.
Yeah.
And we need the new suit, like, now. The show that I find most painful to watch, The Flash. I don't even really know what to say about it. It's just, Yeah, we have the case of the week thing, but that doesn't even feel like it's the main focus of the episode. And then it has like 4 endings. We spend like 10 minutes wrapping up the episode. It kind of makes me wonder what they're doing.
Yeah, it was like an episode of 3/3 where we had this little Caitlin wanting to be, Killer Frost wanting her own little life, totally unnecessary. We had the Cecile third. You know, I love to see Cecile on this TV show. A complete waste of my life watching a Cecile-centric storyline. And then there was the third, roughly, that took place in Earth 3, which I was kind of into. I like learning bits and pieces about the crisis. It's always nice to see a version of Henry Allen, and even though this wasn't Nora Allen, you know, they have found each other on Earth 3, the doppelgangers of Barry's parents, which was nice. Everything to do with crisis, we're learning, but I don't know, I feel maybe The Flash is a show that needs to just abandon Case of the Week. I think it's always done best when there's a very compelling villain and the whole team, the whole time, are working in unity to kind of figure out how to bring them down. I think it was like that with Savitar. I think it was like that with Zoom. I'm not sure it was like that with Reverse Flash in season 1. But it's such a big cast, and of all the shows with big casts in the Arrowverse, Flash is the worst at dealing with them. It'll send people off in teams of 2 for these little skirmishes here, there and everywhere. Let's just remove a few from the team and get the rest of the team working on a Reverse Flash level enemy. But, as you said with the Supergirl review, and I think you're spot on, we're spinning our wheels a bit. It's going to be an arms race for information about the Monitor, the Anti-Monitor, dark matter. Henry and the Nora are looking for dark matter in all the Earths now to see if they can predict when this is coming. So that's happening, but a lot of unnecessary storylines. I mean, if I was to say to you 6 months ago, episode 2 in The Flash's build-up to Crisis on Infinite Earths will be basically a Cecile-centric episode. Good for Cecile if she wants to be a DA for, or a public defender rather, for metahumans. Who gives a shit? I couldn't care less.
You have a lot of animosity towards Cecile.
The next time there's a background character that's off doing something completely unrelated to Team Flash, I will give them equal ire. But I don't know what this was. Not even the Earth 3 stuff with their dirigibles, blimps could save it, really.
Yeah, I think it would have been cool if we'd spent more time on Earth 3. That would have been interesting just to get a little bit more info about other Earths. It looks like a cool Earth too. You can't go wrong with dirigibles. At least it would have felt like it had some sort of coherence to it. Whereas, as you said, this was kind of like an episode in parts, and you had these little teams going off and doing different things that weren't really related to each other or even related to like Team Flash. I like Killer Frost more than I like Caitlin. I'm happy that she's kind of in the forefront, but we didn't really need her decision to become an artist or like express herself or anything like that. If we just see her kicking ass, that would be cool.
Should we move on to Titans?
Yeah.
What did you make of this episode? Because I think we've said a few times, just when the tension is at its height, they'll throw in a flashback episode to completely rob us of that kind of climax.
Yeah. Well, one, I totally called it.
Oh, the catch.
Yeah,
you did.
catch.
You absolutely caught that. Yeah, it was beautiful off the top of your brain right there. It was great.
That said, like I was fairly sure that Connor was going to save Jason, but this whole entire episode, all I was sitting there thinking was like, what happened to Jason? Like that was what I cared about.
Yeah.
So all of this like backstory and stuff about Connor should have been really interesting and compelling, but I was preoccupied with another character, and like it's exactly as you said. They chose an incredibly dramatic moment to stop and go do backstory and completely robbed it of any sort of tension whatsoever. I mean, they could have done it in flashbacks. They could have shown him saving Jason and then gone into his backstory, and that would have been fine. But having like an hour-long episode that had nothing to do with anything we've seen so far. I don't know why they keep doing this. It's a weird decision to make.
They could have condensed that into 25 minutes. Then we get the 25 minutes of him saving Jason and the fallout from that. It seemed like they put a lot of work into that. It was its own little world. It was almost like in any other show I would have said, it could be like a pilot for another show they're about to do. We learnt that Connor Kent is 50% Lex Luthor, 50% Superman. What did you make of that?
I think that's cool. I like that, like, throughout he just referred to them as his two dads.
Yeah.
And so I just, like, kept imagining, like, Lex Luthor and Clark Kent having this kind of, like, domestic little household together and sort of like the odd couple. It'll be interesting to see what they do with this character and what kind of path he goes down, because he's obviously going to be warring with these two sides quite heavily. I mean, he seems to have a good sort of moral compass, but he lacks the, like, kind of emotional control.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the intellect of Lex Luthor, the powers of Superman. He's aware of the
And
conflict
basically the maturity
already.
of a toddler.
Yeah, I'm concerned that's gonna. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about that as the story moves on. I was hoping he'd be, like, you know, ready to go day one, but it's going to be presumably the rest of this entire season is going to be him learning as well, learning on the job. He was taken down with some kryptonite bullets by Mercy Graves, which is weird. We saw her in Supergirl last season. So he's bleeding out on the side of the road. Dick's there, Jason's there, Corey's there. They'll get those bullets out. They'll heal him up.
Yeah, they'll figure it out.
So the flashback, wrong length, arguably, you know, not the thing to have done right now when we want to find out what happened to Jason, but they're not messing around, you know. It was its own world. They went to Kansas, there was the Lex Luthor house, all kinds of scientific laboratory kind of set up, so that was cool. But again, they don't really know how to do a flashback episode well without robbing.
I think they get, like, just too excited about it. They're like, oh, this will really, like, heighten the tension and people will be on the edge of their seats, and it's like, no, that's not what's going to happen. People are just going to be sitting there thinking, like, come on, let's get through this because I want to know what happened.
Frankly, I'm surprised we got the resolution. You know, they might as well have done.
I expected them to not do the resolution, just have, like, kind of an episode just about his origin.
Yeah, I think they did that with the Dove and Hawk episode. Yeah. But yeah, I guess they're slightly learning, but we still want a bit more.
Yeah, they have some ways to go.
Should we round it out with American Horror Story?
I have to say this episode had, like, zero surprises. Pretty much everything that we predicted would happen happened in this episode. We had the fight between the two serial killers. Margaret was revealed to actually be a killer.
Montana was the best man's sister.
I suppose in one sense it was a little bit satisfying because it was like, oh yeah, you know, we predicted this right. On the other hand, it was a little bit disappointing because we predicted it right. There's, like, a fine line between catering to audience expectations and challenging audience expectations, and you need to do a little bit of both to really be effective in your storytelling and to be able to predict so accurately everything that happened in this episode, just us theorizing. I think that's a real flaw in the writing. Like, they're giving away too much at once, and they need to be a little bit more secretive, a little bit more mysterious, build up some tension, have some questions that aren't answered or aren't immediately obvious. Because, I mean, this is basically like a season-long slasher flick, and if there's no tension there, what's the point of it? It's not scary, it's not
surprising.
Yeah, like, it's predictable.
And you got exactly what you wanted, and that was a supernatural element. I know you were very excited about that, and you said that was horror to you. There had to be a supernatural element. And the final shot of the whole show where Ricky Moranis had been killed by Mr. Jingles, and then this PhD watches as his body, like, levitates in the air and he comes back to life. I was thinking, Lex is going to love this. So that was your kind of element that you needed, and you've got that now. What did you think about that scene? Presumably Satan has brought him back to life or something.
I don't know if it's the supernatural element I wanted.
Okay.
Because we talked about before that they were going to have to get rid of one of the serial killers. So at this stage we have 3 serial killers running around. One of them brought back to life by some sort of means. Jingles, who wasn't actually a serial killer but now he is. And Margaret, who was the original killer at the camp. And it's kind of like, you know, what are they just going to divide the people up among themselves? Are we going to have another serial killer fight off? Like, what's going to happen with that?
I'd quite like to know when Daybreak is going to happen, because we've had 4 episodes or 5. They've all been on one night so far, and I'm curious to know when.
Yeah, 4 episodes, and it's still nighttime.
And it's still nighttime. I want to know when it's daytime.
Maybe it's just gonna, because I mean that is kind of like a trope of the slasher flicks is that, like, what, I can never say that. everything happens in one night and all they have to do is make it to the dawn and then they're safe. So I'm wondering if they're just gonna, like, the whole season is gonna be at night and it's gonna be like in the final few episodes that daylight comes, or alternatively we find out that, as you mentioned, that this is some sort of film and we're gonna have a complete gear shift.
I'm still calling the switcheroo. I couldn't honestly watch this much longer with it still being on the same night. If the whole 10 episodes are this one night, I would feel a bit, okay, not into this at all. I like it. I think 4's a good number. Presumably, I haven't seen the trailer for next week. Presumably, there's going to be a 5th, maybe a 6th. There's got to be something else, surely. What did you make of the Margaret revelation? I mean, we saw it coming, but
yeah.
his kind of confusion and heartbreak, this big serial killer and this woman dressed in her kind of like, I don't know quite how you describe it. She looks like the dad from the Wild Thornberrys, and yet she's holding all the power. She just puts him down with 3 bullets.
I would say kind of generally a little bit disappointed by this season of American Horror Story.
Is it the predictability? Is it the kind of lack of intense horror? Is it the lack of kind of...
I think the biggest thing is the predictability.
Yeah.
One of the things I've always enjoyed about American Horror Story was their ability to switch lanes in unexpected ways, and they're not doing that here. It's very, very predictable, and I think particularly out of any genre, horror should have an element of uncertainty to it. Otherwise, what's the point of horror if you see everything coming? It's not effective. So that would be the main thing for me, the predictability.
Yeah. I'm hoping this first part of the season is kind of B-movie level. So it's purposefully predictable, purposefully cheap looking, purposefully going for that kind of look of 80s slasher.
Yeah.
And then when the switcheroo does happen, we're suddenly in proper American Horror Story territory where it's smarter than me, it's confounding, it's unpredictable. The kills are a lot kind of more... I don't know, it's something about the kills that aren't very satisfying in this, do you know what I mean? I want it to feel like horror, I guess, instead of cheesy B-movie horror.
That does it for this week. You can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/geeknerdpod, Facebook /The Geekly. We're on Twitter @geeknerdpod, and we have our website is geeknerdpod.com.